Hello, everybody. Welcome again to Lazio Lounge. In more than 10 days, Lazio season will start. Where is Lazio? Is it ready for the beginning of the season, for the start of Serie A? And let's not forget that the 1st of September, there is the derby. This is Lazio Lounge, the one and only podcast in English about La Prima Squadra della Capitale. Remember, you can follow us on iTunes, Spreaker, Spotify, and YouTube. And please, if you like the show, rate and review and put us 5-star rating on iTunes if you like the show. And remember, you can subscribe to our Patreon page, patreon.com/Lazio Lounge, to support us. And by the way, we want to thank Erfan Goharian, I hope I pronounced it well, our new Patreon. So guys, if you love the show, please, these are the way to help us. But let's get back to action. Alison Mackenzie, in more than 10 days, the season will start. There is Sampdoria Lazio. Do you think, where is Inzaghi team? Is it ready, or there's still things to improve?
Well, I mean, it's always quite hard to tell from pre-season, really, because, like we were talking about last week with Cathal, I think you can sometimes read a bit too much into friendly games. On the other hand, looking at this pre-season in summary, if you've won 9 games in a row and scored, I think it's 59 goals in the process, you can't really be too critical of things, and especially when you consider that in that period more recently we've come up against opponents from Premier League, Bundesliga and now La Liga as well, and beaten all of them. So I think that things are going quite well, but to be totally honest with you, I think we'll only really know the answer to that question come 24th of August when it actually gets going.
Yeah, and one thing important is that all these teams Lazio played started the season, or will start the season, earlier than Lazio. Celta Vigo will start this weekend, and they're playing against Real Madrid, so they have a very, very tough beginning of the season. And let's start with the last friendly match against Celta Vigo. Alzer, I thought Lazio show their quality and the weaknesses in this match. I thought attacking Lazio is going to be a very, very, very dangerous team. It's nice to see finally the wingers going at the end and putting dangerous cross. Ciro Immobile scored twice. One is an assist of Johnny, the other one is of Lazzari. That's definitely the positive things. The negative things is that Lazio struggle, make some mistakes in defense again, and this is not the first time.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think, let's start with the positives. Be an upbeat podcast and keep people listening. I think that, you're right. One thing Lazio have shown in pre-season so far is that this is a team that knows how to attack. I think that the attack in pre-season has shown that it's likely to keep performing at least in the same way that it was towards the end of last season. And it was quite an interesting game against Celta Vigo to kind of see the way that those attacks might take shape in the coming season, because I thought the way that with Alberto and Parolo, stepping out of midfield to support the front two, there's a lot of quick passes, one-touch movements with 4 players in and around the box. And that's obviously very difficult to defend against. And I was quite impressed as well because with Lazio kind of packing that central area, Celta Vigo are needing to kind of commit numbers to those central areas in order to shut down the attacks, and then that therefore means that you have those guys, like you mentioned, Lazzari and Johnny, out wide, and they're getting more space. So when the ball is moved out there, they're actually getting a little bit more time to get those quality of deliveries in, and it was great to see both of them get an assist. And great to see that we do have players in those roles now who are capable of delivering quality crosses from those wide positions, which is something that we didn't see an awful lot of last season, at least. So I think, kind of tactically, I suppose I quite like what I'm seeing already from the way that this team is being set up, and by the way the new additions are settling into it, I suppose.
Yeah, and I was thinking that Correa, that was probably the best player in this summer friendly, didn't play that well against Celta Vigo, and still Lazio was really dangerous. Now, the final result was 2-1, but in the second half, I think Lazio should have scored at least other 2 goals. Caicedo hit the bar. Lazzari had a great chance. The goalkeeper made 2 incredible saves. So you can see that finally Lazio is creating so many chances. Last year was only centrally. Now it's everywhere. And we saw even Ciro Immobile that finished last year not very well, scoring a lot. And I think, when you have Lazzari and Johnny, a lot of cross coming. Obviously, who is the happiest man is Ciro Immobile, because now he has far more chances than he had last year, where he had to create them. So I think this is really important, and this is probably why Inzaghi asked to have Lazzari and Johnny in the team.
Yeah, and I think Ciro Immobile is a good example to use with that as well, because we so often saw him last year either coming deep into midfield to get the ball or pulling out really wide into the usually the left-hand channel to try and pick it up, find some space there and bring the ball in field. But this last game in particular, you didn't really see that happening quite so often. So I think that he's probably in this system, at least when there is that quality out wide, and he can basically play more as a penalty box striker, to be at the end of those intricate passing moves with the midfield behind him and Correa beside him, and also to be the one who's looking to get on the end in the box from those deliveries. And that kind of puts Immobile in the position he's best at, which is to be the guy who's finishing things off rather than the guy who's trying to come and get the ball and make things happen. He can be very good at that as well, but I think we all know that his striker's instinct has really been second to none in Italy, perhaps with the exception of the kind of tail end of last season. But yeah, I think that it's going to make a lot of difference having those quality players in wide positions. I think also, talking about, you mentioned there the different ways to goal, it was quite promising to see as well that we threatened a couple of times from set pieces. That was something we talked about last season a bit, was that Lazio weren't threatening so much as they had the year before from those dead ball situations. But in this game, Vavro had a very good chance in the first half, which he headed over. He is a huge target for those set pieces. And Acerbi also obviously hit the crossbar with a header as well. So I'm hoping that that's a signal. Again, probably don't want to read too much into it, but I hope that with Vavro's height to add to Acerbi's aerial ability, we might be able to get a couple more goals from those situations next season as well.
I think, talking about set pieces, the key is to have Luis Alberto back to his form. Last year he wasn't playing that well, and I thought even on the set pieces he wasn't as sharp as last year. Now he's back, and that's one of the secrets. But Alistair, one of the things I wanted to watch in particular in this match was Johnny, because we know Lulic is injured. We're going to talk about the injury situation later, but obviously one of the question marks with Johnny is how can he defend, because we know he's very good, very talented when he has to attack. He comes from a team that was playing a different position, and now he has to defend as well, so I was really curious to see him defending. I thought it didn't go very bad. One thing important is you can see that when Johnny was playing, so especially in the first half, Lazio, when they were attacking on Johnny's side, Lazio were playing with 4-man defense, with Rado sliding on the left side, Vavro and Acerbi playing central defender, and Lazzari playing like right back. So that obviously helped Johnny, but I thought overall it wasn't that bad for Johnny defending.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that you have to accept with a player like him in that role, though, is that he will leave space in behind him. But I think by playing him there, you're almost accepting that sacrifice because of his attacking qualities, because of the fact that he can beat players, he's quick, he has good delivery, and he can really contribute in an attacking sense. So like you say, if there is a kind of tactical model set up in order to cover that space when he is bombing forward, then that at least gives you a little bit of protection. I remember, I think towards the start of the game, he missed a couple of challenges, lunged in at the wrong times, and I was starting to think maybe this guy is going to leave us exposed a bit more often than we would like. But yeah, I think you're right. Over the course of the game, I think he improved in that regard. I think definitely it's still a case of a player who's learning a new role, though, so he will need time there. But yeah, I think that so far he looks very, very impressive, to be honest, considering we bought him, like you say, as a winger. One person I wanted to ask you about, though, who I was keeping a keen eye on in this game, was another new signing, which is Denis Vavro, because he's someone who's not necessarily convinced everyone in this pre-season that he's ready to start in that right centre-back role. And again, at the start of this game, he found himself, I think it was after just a few minutes into the game, he missed a challenge and Celta Vigo went streaming in and had a good chance. So do you think he's ready to be starting the first game of the season?
That's a good question. I think he's not ready, and you can see against Celta Vigo, especially in the first half, making a lot of mistakes, position mistakes. He struggled when they launched the ball behind him. You said one mistake. I think he had other couples in the first half where he forgot to make the right movement, etc. So, yeah, as we said, he needs time to be ready. And the fact that Lazio starts the season with two very complicated matches is not helping him. But I think you have to give him time, and he has to play to improve. So I think he'll have to start, but I don't know. I think you can expect him making some mistakes in the first matches, which is not ideal. The other thing is Bastos played really well, but he played well on the left side, and I didn't like that much Rado performance in the first half. So I don't know. Acerbi was left a little bit too alone in that match, I thought, and that was some of the negative things about this match.
One of the other things I found quite interesting was the fact that Bobby Adekanye, when he came on, was actually brought on as a left wing back instead of playing up top in the way that he has been for most of pre-season. And to be completely honest, I really wasn't convinced that he has a clue what he's doing in that position. I think defensively he looked like he was almost doing it for the first time, and he got in a bit of trouble when he put an elbow in someone's face. But also, I think I don't think that's his natural role. It was obviously something we spoke to Neil Atkinson about, the possibility of him playing in that role, but it does go to show, I think, that Inzaghi's looking at different options, because obviously with Lulic out injured, I mean, yeah, like you say, we'll get onto that, but Riza Durmizi could well be heading out. Jordan Lukaku is just eternally injured, so we do need, I suppose, other options perhaps in that role. But what did you make of that decision and his performance?
Well, the first question mark is, did he play there on the left because Inzaghi didn't have any other options, or Inzaghi's trying to teach him that position? Another thing, I don't know if we ever talk about, but it looks like Johnny arrived at Alonso with a little bit of extra kilo, and so he's not really fit to play 90 minutes. This is another question mark for the beginning of the season. I was surprised to see Adekanye there, and at the beginning he made a couple of mistakes, but then after the start, I thought he made a nice recovery in the penalty box, sliding and getting the ball away. And we saw him when Lazzari had a great chance. I don't know if Cataldi or someone else gave him the ball, and he ran away on the left side, and it was really difficult to catch him because he's so fast and he's good with the ball, and put this cross on the other side with Lazzari just anticipated by the defender. I thought he can be very dangerous there. Obviously, he have to improve his defensive skill, but yeah, I think it's a position he can play there. Now the question is, did Inzaghi play him there because he hadn't any other options, or he really thinks he can evolve and be a left winger in the 3-5-2?
Well, I think Inzaghi was certainly wanting to have a look at him. But if you look at the players who were on the pitch at that time, you could easily have moved Patrick out there. I mean, that's not obviously his best role, but Patrick is someone who's versatile enough to be able to play at left wing back and feel more comfortable there probably than Bobby Adekanye does. But I'm sure Inzaghi is just wanting to throw him in a competitive game and see how he kind of faced up to that challenge. But yeah, I mean, at the moment, as it stands, kind of going back to the Vavro things as they are, we've basically got a situation where Vavro is the first choice right centre back, and behind him is Patrick, because with Luis Felipe out injured and Wallace basically trying to find a new club for him, Bastos has essentially become the number 2 to Radu on the left, because he did a very good job there towards the end of last season. I think he deserves that, but he has essentially become almost a left centre back option more than a right centre back option. Obviously he can play either, but I think that the options there still are actually pretty slim when it comes down to it, because if there is a problem with the speed with which Vavro can adapt to the new game, if there's, God forbid, a problem with Acerbi, then that defence, the kind of options of players who can line up there still isn't really filling me with any great confidence.
No, and we already know that Patrick played there against Celta Vigo, and it always scares me seeing Patrick playing there. But as you were saying, there are not that many options. Wallace came back to Rome. He had a little injury. I know Lazio is trying to find a solution for him. Ramos is pretty much always injured. He's now training again. We don't know when he's going to be available. Armini should have been an option, but he's not there. He's training with the Primavera. So, yeah, the impression is Lazio could have another player there, but I don't think he's coming. So, yeah, I don't feel particularly comfortable with this situation, but I feel this is the situation Lazio will start the season with. And so I think Inzaghi have to adapt and find the best solution for it. Which, looking at how Vavro is playing and how the season will start with 2 very complicated matches, it's a big question mark, I think.
One final thing, just on the Celta Vigo game that I wanted to run past you, was that there was a fairly negative reaction in some quarters and social media, certainly, to Strakosha's error for their goal, which was a bad one. As bad as as worrying as some of the defending is sometimes, to be honest, in that game, Lazio didn't really concede an awful lot beyond long-range shots, and the mistake that Strakosha made was a bad one. The ball was moving quickly and it was moving through a group of bodies, but you'd still expect him to save it. But I mean, just because I have seen a fair few comments of people who are slightly concerned about Strakosha, about perhaps being error prone, which isn't something I really view him as. So I just wanting to see if do you think that was just a slip up, a small blip, or is that a sign of something you're concerned about?
To be honest with you, I said that last year the biggest improvement Strakosha made was he didn't make terrible mistakes, which is very common for young goalkeepers. I don't remember a mistake from Strakosha last season. So I think this is a normal mistake. I thought he made a couple of good saves in the second half. And we know what are the problems with Strakosha. Sometimes he's too overconfident with his feet and takes too many risks. Maybe sometimes his passing is not perfect. But apart from that, I think he's one of the top goalkeepers in Serie A. He's improving when he has to get out of the goal and grab the ball. So I think really he's one of the top goalkeepers. And when there were rumors of him leaving for Tottenham or other team, I was a little bit concerned because I don't think that there are on the market a young goalkeeper as Strakosha is at that level.
Yeah, I agree. And funnily enough, actually, I thought it was kind of ironic in a way that in the same game, his biggest weakness, which generally is viewed as his distribution, I suppose, and like you say, that overconfidence sometimes happens. I thought his distribution in that game was actually very good, and the way he dealt with crosses, set pieces, I thought he was remarkably confident in many ways, considering he'd made such a bad error. And the thing is as well, if you're going to make that kind of mistake, it's much better that he makes it now, isn't it? So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Alistair, at the moment, Lazio have won all the friendly match. Now, we know that it's nothing. You don't get anything out of it. But obviously winning is, helping the team gain confidence, etc. Do you think this is really important? Or at the end of the day, all that it counts is playing good football and be ready for the first match of the season?
Yeah, I mean, of course it's important. I think it's probably more important. It's more important than it might seem, actually, because this is a pre-season where not only have we won all these games, but we've had the chance to get more or less all the key players in, getting a full pre-season. You mentioned Luis Alberto already. I think that's going to make a huge difference going into the new season. The fact that he's had a really good full pre-season, he's fully fit again. Obviously, there have been a few injury problems with Milinkovic-Savic recently and Lulic, but nothing too serious at least. And the team's looking very sharp in a lot of these games as well. So, again, there's probably only, you could say, three games that were genuinely competitive out of those 9. You could maybe say another 3 which were at least against, commendable opposition, professional opposition at least. But yeah, I mean, it's quite hard to really say how that's going to translate on the first day of the season. I think the one thing that Lazio have above many other teams, including Sampdoria, I suppose, who we've got on the first day, and Roma, who we've got in week 2, is the stability factor. I mean, Inzaghi does keep referring to this season as year 0 and saying that they're basically starting a new cycle. But the reality of the situation is he's still there, the management team's still the same, this playing squad is more or less still the same. They've kept the big names there, they've added important players to important roles. So I think, hopefully, that's something that might count at the start of the season, is the fact that everybody is pretty much aware of what their responsibilities are and what they should be doing.
And I think one of the important things is that the game plan of Lazio, it's very clear compared to the other teams. Seeing Roma, seeing the other team, you really don't know how they're going to play. Well, Lazio, even in this friendly match, is pretty obvious what type of team is it. And so I think this is really important and positive for the beginning of the season. What scares me a lot is the injury situation, because Lazio still have to play the first official match, and already Lulic, Caicedo, Milinkovic-Savic, Wallace, we had Strakosha out for a long time, Proto still didn't play a second, Ramos again is injured, Lukaku, we don't know when he's going to get back, Maruzic is starting to run again, Durmisi, no news about him. The injury situation is really concerning, and again, Lazio still didn't play an official match, and we already know that there's a risk that some of these players won't be available for the first match against Sampdoria and maybe against Roma. Are you concerned about it as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating, I think, to get through such good pre-season, like I said, without many big concerns injury-wise, and then to kind of get to this point and they start piling up is a bit concerning. But at the same time, realistically, looking through that list, there's not too many starting players who are concerned. Obviously, Milinkovic-Savic is one, and Lulic is one, but both of them are supposedly in a bit of a race to actually get fit for those early games. With Caicedo, I think it's a shame because he obviously finished last season very strongly and has deserved another season at the club. But in a way, I do wonder if that could be a bit of a blessing in disguise in order to really help Inzaghi push through his desire to get hold of a new striker. The fact that Caicedo has gone down injured and the remaining options are pretty sparse once you get past him. So yeah, I mean, I don't think it's the end of the world. Marasic would have been one who would have affected us in the past, but Now we've got Lazzari, it's not quite as damaging. Likewise, Luis Felipe, we're kind of used to him being injured by now, but also Vavro's come in. So I think most of these guys, it's quite a long list, obviously, but hopefully we get the important ones, Milinkovic and Lulic, back when they're supposed to be coming back, which is not too far in the future. And beyond that, I think we've probably got the depth to cope with it for now.
Yes and no. I mean, I'm a little bit concerned, especially knowing the 3-5-2. Inzaghi often, one of the first substitution he makes is he takes off one of the wingers, usually was Lulic or Marusic, etc. And now, at this time, he has no option for them. So we have to hope that Johnny, that it's still a question mark. I thought he started really well, but we still have concern. Plays really well. And on the other side, nothing happened to Lazzari Immobile. As you were saying, now Lazio has no option as a Vice Immobile. I hope, as you were saying, that this will help Inzaghi to convince Tare to sign another Vice Immobile. But I don't think it's going to happen. One thing is, I don't know how much money Tare has available now. I hope they don't buy Betania, to be honest. I've always been very clear, don't rate him that high. I think 25 million euros for Betania is crazy. But I still think that Lazio should need someone there. I thought a cheap solution could have been Palombi, but he's on loan and he scored with his team a lot this weekend in Serie B. So I don't think there's someone from Primavera available now for Lazio. So yeah.
Tunkara's gone now as well.
Yeah, Tunkara's gone. He's definitely gone. He signed with Viterbese a 2-year contract. He left Lazio. I thought Tunkara could have been a star, but he never turned out to be what everybody expected to be. I hope he shined with Viterbese. But yeah, Lazio doesn't have any more option there, and Correa cannot play as a falso 9. So I'm a little bit concerned.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a good moment, I suppose, to move on to this week's kind of Mercato chat, because the search for the striker has very much become the leading line that is dominating all the newspapers and so on every day. And the number of names already that are being talked about is, as usual, pretty formidable. You mentioned Petagna, that's one that's been going around for quite a long time. I think probably more due to the George Mendes links than anything else. Bas Dost, his name has come up. But I mean, Inzaghi is supposedly very keen on a target man, a big striker, so someone who's strong in the air, can essentially from these newfound quality deliveries that we're going to be able to get out from wide, and which is something that we don't really have in this squad as an option anyway. Something you talked about actually last summer, I think, Vittorio, getting a kind of a more physical striker in the squad as well. But the big name, I suppose, and one we've had a question actually on Twitter from Madi saying, seems with Johnny and Lazzari, crosses from both sides is going to be one of the main plans going. How possible is signing a new striker like Llorente? And Fernando Llorente is one who just keeps coming up. But my concern with this, Vittorio, is purely financial. From the reports that are coming out about the possibility of this, it's supposedly that he would be willing to reduce his salary to only 3.5 million a year, which would still make him Lazio's highest paid player, I think. He's 34 years old, though, and he wants a 3-year contract. So there would also be a commission on top. So I think the whole deal would end up getting up to about 20 million. So it's quite easy to look at him as a free agent and think that's business, good business, just because he's free. But it's obviously a bit more complicated than that. So what would you think about that prospect, and is that something you think could realistically happen?
I think this is the perfect example of his agent talking about teams just to create some interest on the player. I think he said at the beginning of July, when there was rumors that Fiorentina was interested in the player, I think he spoke to Sky Sport or something like that and said, even Lazio is interested in Llorente, which I don't believe at all, because as you were saying, he is willing to reduce his salary to 3.5 million euros, who would make him the most high salary for Lazio, even higher than Milinkovic Savic, and we're basically talking about a sub. So we're saying that Lazio would have the most highest player salary. That would be a substitution of Ciro Immobile. That doesn't make sense at all. Before talking about the type of player we're talking about, so you can understand this is rubbish because if Ciro Immobile thinks that the player who is his subs gets a higher salary than him, then he will obviously demand a higher salary, and this will bring all the other players to do the same. So I can understand why Llorente, because it's a type of player that could be useful, even though, as you were saying, he's 34. I think he wouldn't be really useful for Lazio. And let's not forget that Lazio made someone like that a couple of years ago when Lazio signed Cruz. You remember he was playing very well in the past, and Lazio signed him, and pretty much he never played for Lazio because he was always injured. So I think Lazio need a younger player, someone who has obviously a lower salary. I don't think Llorente is the type of player who would bring nothing to the table for Lazio. He's been linked to a lot of teams. I think his agent is trying to find a team, but it's not very easy because, he played decent with Tottenham, but he's not worthy that money.
I think he'd be a good player actually for Lazio if he was on a 1 year, maybe 2 year contract. But I agree. I think the cost of doing it would be ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense for a player to come in and be the highest paid player on the club's books and not to be a starter every week, which you almost certainly wouldn't be in the current set. So I think, Pietro Pellegrini is another one who's been talked about. I think that's quite an interesting option. The problem is I think he's had quite a few injury problems of his own. The papers have been quick to point out it was an agent with Danilo Cataldi, and if anything that makes me less confident that anything is really going on there, because it almost seems like it's just been drawn up as a possibility because of that. I think that getting a target man, getting a physical striker in the squad would be a good idea. I think it could be obviously a good last resort option, a roll of the dice when you need a goal to benefit from those deliveries, like Nadi said. I think we need to be sensible about it and either look to the future or get someone who's a bit more affordable.
Alistair, you know what's the funny thing? Because I did a video on my YouTube channel today about this, and someone wrote me, I would play Bastos there. And I thought, wow, there's someone else thinks that.
Someone's been listening.
I would bring back Kozak, Libor Kozak. I loved him when he was at Lazio.
Yeah, me too, absolutely. I mean, he scored one of the best goals I've seen live, I think, and it was amazingly when he was playing on the wing. I think it was about the only time he got played on the wing. It was against Cesena, and he cut in from the left and curled a shot into the top corner. But he had his moments. I have no idea what he's up to now. He was at Barry for a while, but they've gone bust, so I don't know what's happened to him.
Yeah, I don't know for which team he signed, and it's incredible because I don't know if you agree with me but when he was playing for Lazio, you can see his talent. You can see. I thought when he signed, did he sign for West Ham when he left Lazio? No, maybe Aston Villa. Sorry. And I had a friend who came to me and said, "Hey, we are signing Kozak. What do you think about it?" And I said, "Look, I think he's the perfect fit for the Premier League. He's tall. He's a real striker, etc." And said he got a bad injury, but I thought that was just the beginning of a great career. I'm really surprised to see Kozak. After all he did with Lazio, he was coming in the last 5 minutes and scoring every time. So I thought he would have a terrific career, and I'm really astonished to see how bad it was after he left Lazio. I really don't understand why.
And don't forget he was the Europa League Golden Boot winner as well one season.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting. Yeah, I think to be honest, that injury he did get at Villa was a really bad one. He broke his leg, I think, and considering how big his legs are, it took him quite a long time to recover from that. And I don't think he's ever been the same player since. So I don't know if it was that simple, but there is definitely correlation between that injury and what's happened to him.
But even before the injury, he wasn't playing at Lazio's level when he was at Villa. So I don't know. Maybe he didn't find the same atmosphere, the same, type of football that he was playing at Lazio. But I really believe that he could have become a great striker. And I think that's the type of striker Lazio would need now, right? The player that comes in the last 6 minutes and you put all the ball in the box and he's there and scoring. So that's the type of player that Lazio would need. I don't know if it's available, especially at Lazio price, but yeah, that would make a massive difference, I think, for the team.
Yeah, sure. I think we just have to wait and see how this goes, really, to be honest. But we've still got enough time. We've still got quite a lot of time in the market, but it would be nice to get someone in with a bit of time to spare. I want to move this on, though, to another big man, Sergej Milinkovic-Savic, because there is some news. There's some real news from Milinkovic-Savic this week for a change, because after everything, and we were talking about how we were getting kind of quietly confident about him staying last week, and now he's basically come out in an interview with a media outlet in Serbia to say essentially that he's very happy at Lazio and he's not been listening to any of the transfer rumours, and that he's concentrated in preparing for the new season, and he wants for nothing at Lazio. So it's essentially kind of backs up everything we already knew, everything we already thought, and also again backs up in my mind just what a great professional he is and how well he's dealt with this summer again after last summer.
And one thing, Alistair, we have to say is that he's a great joker, or he really enjoys Lazio. What was it last week that Lazio tweeted celebrating 4 years of from the signing of Milinkovic-Savic, and he retweeted saying it's a pleasure to be playing with this unbelievable team, etc. If you're planning to leave or you're not happy, etc., you would never do this. And I bring the example of Icardi. Even when things were going well with Inter, he was sometimes tweeting something a little bit mysterious, something that looked like he was happy to move or move to another team, etc. Milinkovic-Savic never did it, and all these times with all these rumors, etc., he never did nothing wrong, never ever. So, as he said in this interview to, I think it's Espresso, one of the Serbian website, he said, "I'm happy here at Lazio. I'm nothing. I don't miss nothing, and I have contracts here. So, I think he's really happy, and probably he knows that Manchester United was his only chance. Now in Italy there are a lot of rumors of Inter. I don't think Inter has money to buy him, not at all. So I think he understands that there's a big chance that he will stay at Rome, and I think after last year he's really willing to prove everybody wrong, to prove that he's the Milinkovic-Savic of 2 years ago, not of the last season. And I'm really looking forward, because seeing him training like he did in Alonso. Now we don't know how much he will be out for the injury. He said it's not that serious, but seeing how he trained this summer, I'm really confident that he will have a huge impact again with Lazio.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait for him to stay once again. So Massey writes, "Hi guys, I can't wait to see our team in action again. I expect to see Cataldi more often on the pitch. What a pity that we sold Murgia and we don't have more players playing constantly from youngsters like Strakosha." So I suppose, first of all, Cataldi, is that something you're expecting as well from this season, is to see a lot more of Cataldi?
Well, I think obviously he was one of the first substitutions to come in against Celta Vigo. Now without Badel, I think his role will be the Vice Leva, and we cannot expect Leva to play all the matches. So I think Cataldi will play more than last year. It's a pity too who don't have that much Primavera players in the first squad anymore. I thought that was one of the positive things of Simone Inzaghi, but Lombardi and all the other players are away on loan, which is a pity. So I'm happy to see Cataldi and Strakosha. I would love to see even Guerrieri, but or Guerrieri plays or Strakosha plays. So My question is, Alistair, is now Guerrieri the number 2, or do you think when Proto comes back, he's going to be the third goalkeeper?
No, I'd expect Proto to still be number 2 when he comes back, but obviously he'll need a bit of time to recover. And yeah, like you say, it's a bit tough when you've got 2 young players and they're both goalkeepers, because there's not an awful lot you can do to really rotate them and give them much game time. So yeah, I think we'd all like to see some more young players, and I think we all felt the same way about Moja, but at the end of the day, he wasn't going to get in that team very easily. He wasn't going to get the game time he needs to develop, and fair enough, he deserves to play regular football because he's a talented player. So I don't have any problem with him going off to Spal. Final question, which is quite a tricky one, to be fair. Dave Dow is asking us for predictions on where the club will finish this season. Do you want to go first?
Scudetto.
Easy.
I
thought that might take longer.
No, I don't know. It's tricky because I think the other teams are really not complete. I mean, Roma didn't convince me at all. Milan is building an interesting team, but I still see weaknesses there. Atalanta have the Champions League. I think Lazio will be fighting for the 4th spot. There are question marks with Juventus, Inter and Napoli, but I don't think Lazio is still at that level. But yeah, I think Lazio will fight for the 4th spot. Now we have to see how Roma finish the transfer market. But yeah, I think Lazio should be better than Roma and Milan, but we're going to see.
Yeah. For me, I mean, I suppose with these kind of things, you have to kind of reserve the right to change your mind if something crazy happens. But to be honest, I think that the kind of top 6 will be broken 3-3 a bit more this season. I think that Inter are going to get closer to Napoli. They are probably going to drop off a wee bit in Sarri's first season. So I think that top 3 could be quite an interesting battle. And below that, I think it's really a case of what happens for me with Roma. To be honest, I think Milan have put together a very good team, but I think that whole thing is, there are so many new pieces being put together that I think that's going to take a while to actually get up and running. So yeah, I think that obviously 4th place is always the objective. For me, I think this season we've got a very good chance of getting there, just because, like I said towards the start of the show, there's that added bonus of the stability as well. But like I say, if between now and the end of the transfer market those teams manage to do something miraculous, then you never know.
Yeah, especially because we know that Inter is trying to sign Dzeko, and if Dzeko leaves, then Roma will have to sign a striker, because I don't think Schick will be enough. And we still have to see if Milan's going to sell Donnarumma or other key players. I think they have to do it for the financial issue, but you know, with the finances in Italy, you never know.
The other thing I should add as well is the last season, I'm not writing them off in this at all. I just think that Champions League campaign will test their resources. They got knocked out of Europe very early in the Europa League last year, and I think that really helped them in terms of having a fresh squad for their league run. And I don't think that they're going to be as high up the table this season as they were last, just because although they've managed to keep that squad together, it's not exactly got huge depth to it, and the Champions League campaign is something that they're going to want to really put their best efforts into as well. So I think Torino will still be quite strong because they've kept that team together, but likewise European commitments as well. I think it might come down to who's got the better depth, and I think that the 3 clubs I mentioned earlier might just come out on top of that.
Yeah, you have to consider even Fiorentina probably, even though I don't think the team is still at the level. But yeah, it's curious. They are building an interesting team, I think.
Yeah, again, just so much change. You know, new owners, relatively new coach still, and a lot of new players. So it's going to be a really interesting season. I mean, it's for us. It's like we've already said, it's more or less more of the same. We've got some interesting new players, but the rest of it is quite similar to what we ended last season with. But across the league, there are some very interesting changes going on across all the clubs, and also some quite interesting new promoted clubs as well. It'd be interesting to see what they can produce as well. So
yeah, and the season is starting in more than 10 days, but not this weekend, the next one. So let's see who's going to be ready. Very important start of the season for Lazio. 2 tough matches. Then there's the international break. Then there's Lazio, if I'm not wrong. So it would be really important for Lazio to start in a different way compared to last year, where Lazio lost the first two matches of the season. But Alistair, I think we can wrap it up here, right? I don't know if you have other questions from our listeners.
No, we are all done, so don't worry. You can get off to bed.
Finally. I don't know, guys, where you're living, but here in Italy it's so warm these days that I hardly had a full night of sleep, so I hope today is going to be a little bit fresher. And we're going to come back next week before Sampdoria-Lazio, the beginning of the season. Who knows if Lazio is going to sign other players before the next podcast. We know Inzaghi is pushing, we are pushing too, but I don't know if Iglitare and Claudio Lotito will listen to our podcast and start signing a new striker. Who knows, Alistair? But if you want to follow us, remember, you can follow us on Twitter, on Facebook. You can subscribe to our podcast on Spreaker, on Spotify, on iTunes. Please rate and review the show if you like it. And if you want to help us, you can subscribe to our Patreon page, patreon.com/Lazio Lounge. Thank you, Alistair Mackenzie.
Cheers.
Thanks, everybody, for listening, and have a nice rest of the week, and we're going to come back next week before Lazio Sampdoria. Bye, guys.